Welcome back to today's episode of Your Pelvic Health Podcast. I am Susan Winograd, the owner of Pelvic Core Rehab, and I am beyond thrilled to be your host today. I am so excited about today's episode. I am welcoming Jen Radney, the owner and founder of Birth of a Goddess. And before we started recording, Jen and I gave each other a big hug and we're like, how long have we been friends and collaborating? And I think it's been about 5 years, and it truly was love at first sight. I feel like Jen and I met, we had met for coffee. We go to the same exercise yoga studio called Evolution Yoga on Coconut Creek, which is amazing. You should all try it out, those that live in South Florida. We went for coffee after, and it was literally like a connection, and I knew that we were going to be friends and collaborate and do great things together. Jen, welcome.
Thank you so much.
I am so beyond excited to have you. Jen does it all. Literally, she does it all. And over the last 5 years, Jen has evolved in a way that only people can dream of. So, Jen, can you introduce yourself? Because I will not do it justice.
Thank you so much. So I am a mother of three. My children are, kind of grown, 19, 23, and 25. And
it's crazy that you have a 19, a 23, and a 25-year-old. Watch the video of this recording, guys, because you won't believe it. She looks like a teenager.
Stop it. Thank you. But I don't feel like it inside. So just really coming to that realization responsibly as a mother, what I wanted to be as a role model in the community that I really felt like I needed and wanted, and just doing the work to shift to call all of that in, and yeah, wonderful, wonderful women like you coming forward and, just about supporting our community. So I'm primarily a holistic doula. I do from preconception all the way through holding that space for women in postpartum, and a lot of womb care and connecting to who you are and your sense of identity, and helping mothers go through matrescence, which is from a young adult and a young woman into their motherhood, and really acknowledging those social shifts and the physical shifts and the emotional shifts and your relationship shifts and all of it. Yeah.
It's amazing. And you really have evolved in such a beautiful way since I first met you. So when I first met you, you were primarily a yoga instructor, which you still do. I actually love Jen so much that I recommended one of my clients reach out to her. Now they have a beautiful private little pregnancy yoga group, which they absolutely adore her. Jen's the only one I would recommend for that. She's phenomenal. And you were primarily a yoga instructor and a doula. And I've watched you evolve into so much more of a holistic, going back to your roots, tapping into your inner power. I'd love to hear about that evolution, that it's almost like an emergence, of yourself. How did it all happen?
Thank you. It happened from really just recognizing clearer vision of the community that I felt like I had been calling for, and shifting from that kind of victimhood of sitting around saying, well, why don't I have the right girlfriends and the right support? And recognizing that I really, through my actions, was the best role model for my children, and wanting that community for them. And really just doing the work to step into it and overcoming my own fears, and saying, if I want to inspire others to overcome their fears through different stages, and really embrace the different stages of womanhood, that I had to do it myself.
I love that. My husband and I always say that the most important thing in parenthood is to tell your children, do as I do, don't do as I say. Mm-hmm. So we have to lead by example. We have to walk the walk, and you most certainly have, which is amazing. You were telling me, and I've seen you post about this online. Tell us about your upcoming trip.
So this is huge for me. You know, I was a stay-at-home mom for a very long time, and my ex-husband traveled a lot, and that was part of, you know, our life of him being abroad, and I had never traveled the world. So this is my big girl moment of going off, going up to Ecuador, and I'm studying with the midwives and the medicine women, a lot of shamanic practices, but very much in what their birth culture is and hands-on womb healing. And we'll see what magic happens there.
That is amazing. And you were saying that you want to bring that cultural aspect back to the States. Why was that so important to you?
Well, I feel like when I'm working with women, one of the biggest things and how it comes back to the womb, it's your center of identity. And we have so much disconnect over knowing our own cycles and asking everybody outside of us. And it's something so intimate and personal. And when we're so cyclical and life is so cyclical, so to really understand and integrate our different waves and the tides and to ride those waves. So the ultimate moment, that pivotal expansion that we grow, that big boom of giving birth, it's just mirrors life and women constantly. Yeah. So we don't have to wait to embrace just that moment of birth. It's about coaching women through their own cycles and through their own different stages. So whether it's young adults and whether we're talking to a girl that's 12 years old and the way that she views her upcoming changes and period and womanhood, the culture is very, very hands-on and different. And the use of herbs and touching yourself and connecting with yourself.
Yes. Our society, our culture has really indoctrinated us into this like sort of biomedical model where you get pregnant, you go to the doctor once a week, once a month, you give birth, you get the green light at 6 weeks. It's in kind of like an out-of-body experience, not in a good way. Like no one is helping you tap in to your emotional energy. No one's helping you connect. We're very much taught to listen to what doctors say and not ask questions. And to me, it feels like there's nothing intuitive about the process. And I think what you're doing is amazing. I love it. After Ecuador, what do you hope to bring back and practically implement for moms? And do you want to go all over the world and learn what different cultures do?
I feel I've actually inquired in different places what the birth cultures are, and the indigenous really have kept it sacred. So really going back to those places where they have kept those cultural connection, like in Brazil, everybody gets a C-section. So I'm not going to be going to Brazil and asking them about that.
But I did not know that.
It's crazy.
Wow.
But I do have the opportunity when I go to Ecuador already. We have close friends that own a medical clinic and a plastic surgery clinic. And I just spoke to him last week, and he said, when you're done with your trip, can you come over to the other side of Ecuador and speak to our OBGYNs? Because we even live in Ecuador, and we don't even understand the birth culture and the midwives and all of those ancient practices. So there's everywhere this diversity and this separation between the old and the new, and just integrating that. So of course we appreciate modern medicine, and it's wonderful when it's necessary. Yes. But there's also tapping in, and that's where the womb care and your pelvic floor and understanding the cycles of your body and taking those moments to tap in and say, what is going on within me? Physically, emotionally, hormonally.
Yes.
And recognizing, like in my stage now being perimenopausal, how much that helps me get back into alignment and understand what I'm feeling and my hormones.
I just gave a workshop last night to a group of primarily menopausal women, and with any age demographic that I'm giving a workshop to, my first slide is always understand your body. understand your basic anatomy, understand how your female organs work, because if you understand how it works, number one, you can better problem solve and help yourself and be proactive. And number two, you can communicate so much more effectively what you need from people. So I think that that is so important. There are so many women who don't understand the birthing process or the process of pregnancy and what happens, and what happens in the womb and what happens after birth. So I think that bringing that back is amazing. I've seen some of your not your YouTube, I'm sorry, your Facebook and Instagram videos about these indigenous birthing, I guess, the houses.
Centers.
They're centers, and they look amazing. It's so incredible how simple they could make it and how effective it is. I always say, even with physical therapy, you don't need fancy equipment to be great and effective and efficient. And it just looks like they've not deviated from their roots. They've not deviated from their culture, and they're still doing best practices.
They are.
Which
the
is
way
amazing.
that what it looks like is bars against the wall and a mattress on the floor and a silk hanging from the ceiling to hold down from, and
the birthing seat I love.
And the birthing seat and the stool. And so the environment might be more modern and you're in a birthing center, but it's still vertical, upright birthing, and it's very maternal led, and it's very empowering.
Yes.
And yes, there's very big difference when we walk into a hospital and we're put in a bed and the lights are on, or creating an environment that's intimate and allows your womb space to open and feel comforted and nurtured, and an environment where we can just drop in, because yes, we go to altered spaces.
Yes.
And it's an existential moment.
Yeah.
And you need that. It's more about women witnessing you and holding that space for you to stand in your power, like literally stand in your power and roar this baby out.
Literally and figuratively. How do you create a space like that as a doula for moms that do give birth in hospitals? That I would imagine, I'm not a doula, but that would be a little challenging. Is it just that you're able to tap in and sort of retreat into your own energy? Because to me, there's nothing spiritual, there's nothing energetic about giving birth in a hospital.
It has to be from within. Mm-hmm. So I do a lot of coaching throughout the pregnancy on the mindset. And really it parallels how you're going to mother your child.
Yes.
So you can be in Target and they're having a temper tantrum. Do you get down eye to eye and look at them and connect with them and communicate? Can we tune out all of life's distractions and really make these connections with this person, this soul in front of you?
Yes.
So mirroring that no matter where we are. I've thrown a rebozo in a tree outside a birthing center and said, you've been laboring all night. Let's go outside and let's greet the day and watch the sunrise and hang from the tree and ground our feet. And we can do that anywhere.
Yes.
It's about opening the box and in the hospital, it might be about closing the curtains.
Yes.
But giving them permission to just be them and tap into their bodies. And it's about doing the work throughout. You can't expect to show up in the hospital and all of a sudden be able to tune in. So there's a lot of affirmations and meditations and the coping mechanisms that they're not just going to have through their birth, but take all the way through into motherhood. Because motherhood and postpartum, it's jarring. It's whole
jarring. I just interviewed Nicole Cumberbatch from the Motherhood Village, and we were just saying how nobody can prepare you for that transition in life. Creating that community is so important and having that support, but it is a transition that you really cannot understand until you go through it. And the more you work on that mindset and the more you can really be there for yourself, to know yourself, the better you're going to show up for your baby, and your life and your family and, you know, your partner. So I think that is wonderful. Do you have moms that you work with that perhaps in the beginning have a difficult time with that, have a difficult time really
Absolutely.
connecting with their own energy? What do you think is that transitional point where they are like, I get it. I'm starting to get it. I'm starting to be able to tap in and feel it.
That moment you start feeling that baby, that life within you, and tapping in. So of course, you know, if you're not used to tapping into that womb space,
Yes.
and you feel disconnected, the most connected feeling is recognizing, oh my goodness, there is life within me. And when that clicks and you go through that, and it, you know, then there's this awakening that's happening. There's an energy, there's a life inside of you, and you can't really wrap your mind around where you're going, but it's taking the time. Like, thank goodness we have those 9 months to enter into this transition.
Yes.
So the first trimester is very much a head space, and I imagine it, and I feel energetically, it's like the soul is settling into you. So we go through that first trimester where it's very much a head space, and it's very much the throat chakra, and we're communicating. And then we start to enter into the heart space, and it becomes real. And then it starts to enter into that womb space, and we start to really feel the baby. And we start to feel the fullness. So it doesn't happen in one day. There might be a spark of a moment, of a little bit of an awakening, but it really is gradual transitions.
That makes so much, it makes so much sense. And I love the way that you describe the chakras because, you know, I was really sick my first trimester. So for the first trimester of all my pregnancies, it was quite literally in the throat chakra. And then, once it goes down and it goes into your heart chakra, I think things really do start to like settle and sink in, and you're really able to tap into your femininity and your maternal instincts. So I absolutely can appreciate that from a personal perspective. Do you help moms develop birth plans?
Absolutely. And it's not about, you know, sometimes I see or I get a request, can I have a birth plan?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about giving them a birth plan. It's about holding that space and educating and communicating what is right for you. Again, that's where the connection versus disconnection and asking outside of ourselves come from. And I also, you know, part of my program is radical responsibility. You have to do the work. If you want the results, you have to do the work. And I'll give you the guidelines, and I'll support you, and I'll try to lead the way. Well, not lead the way. Actually, I encourage them to go out there, and I will follow their lead. If you want a maternal-led birth experience, you have to embrace a maternal-led pregnancy. And then you step into conscious parenting, where it's a maternal-led home.
That is brilliant. And I knew already that we were in line with each other. But when I talk to my clients about the programs that we offer, I list a set of things, and then I ask them, what am I offering you in this program? And the answer is, I am offering you the framework, but you need to take responsibility. You need to take ownership of your health. You need to have complete faith that your body is meant to do this and meant to heal. Because I think that we've also, I guess, in culturally been, or in society have been trained that if you have something going on in your body, you can hire somebody else or recruit somebody else to take care of you. And that's really that doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not sustainable, and there's no carryover in that. And I was actually, a few podcasts ago, I mentioned I very, very often now don't even like to refer to myself as your physical therapist. We are teammates, we're partners, we're in this together. I will walk with you every step of the journey, but you have to do the work.
Yes.
Right? Because we cannot do the work for them.
I also recognize women will come to me, and sometimes they're not ready to do the work.
Yeah.
It's just like therapy. And you know that there's a direction you want to go in, but you're not quite ready. And I also honor that space. So, whatever comes up, I feel like karmically it's what's meant to be for your evolution, your personal evolution. And it's not going to happen in one moment. So sometimes it is your birth experience that cracks you open and motivates you to make those changes afterwards. And there's no shame in that.
Yes.
We have to accept what's in front of us and accept our situations and embrace how can I continue to learn and grow from this.
Absolutely. And I think as healthcare providers, doulas, physical therapists, we have to do the work constantly in really meeting people where they are at. So, and I am speaking from personal experience also. Very often I have clients and I want them to heal so badly because to me, it's so tangible. Mm-hmm. I see it for them. I feel it for them. I know the path for them. But if they're not ready, I need to meet them where they are at.
Well, I learned that. Remember when my mother was going through some issues?
Yes.
And there was a lot of resistance. Yes. And she wouldn't let me support her. And, especially the way mothers and daughters can get into it with each other. And that was a huge life lesson for me. And that was actually a huge shift in our relationship, in holding that space for her and hearing her and giving her the time to just go through what she was going through physically and emotionally with it. And it was a year. And she finally, with holding the space instead of fighting with her, she came around and she started to heal. And of course, when it's a loved one and you're invested in it, you want, if you have the knowledge and you can see the path, but it's much more about just honoring where they're at, because every day we're in that growth, every year. And it's recognizing, like us coming to each other and recognizing, wow, I see you. I honor the growth that you've had in these 5 years since I've seen you.
Yes.
Not yesterday, how are we different than who we were?
Yeah. And I think that is also the work that we have, just working on allowing people to hold that space, because we want to help them so badly. I was just talking about this for you guys that are have already listened to the podcast with Nicole Cumberbatch. I talked about the book Untamed with Glennon Doyle. And so it just brings me to another story that she writes about in her book, where her sister went through a grieving process and she moved into her house in her basement. And, Glennon Doyle wrote how she goes downstairs and she wants to go there and be there for her sister and hug her and hold her hand. And as she approached her door, she heard her crying. Mm-hmm. And then she realized that the best thing I could do for her right now is hold that space for her. So she sat down in front of her room and held vigil and just allowed her sister to go through the grieving process. And that's really, really hard for us to do sometimes, but it's the biggest favor that we can do for people. It's the biggest honor and service that we can give them. And just even that acknowledgement that I'm here for you, but I'm helping you hold that space.
Well, that's exactly it. As practitioners, I feel like there's a model of come to me and I'm going to do for you. So there definitely is that shift in recognizing I'm going to hold that space for you. I always tell my moms in postpartum, I'm not going to come into your house and I'm not going to do it for you. I'm going to come into your house and I'm going to mother you so you can take care of your child. And there's that energetic bubble. And if I'm on top of you, then I'm suffocating your own growth and your light. We need to allow that space. So it's like there's a circle and there's you energetically in the middle, but I'm going to leave that energetic space for your growth and your growth and your growth and your expansion into motherhood. And they call me and they text me and we talk, and I'm always there for them years later, whether they want a play group or they have a challenge in communicating and stepping up for themselves with their mother-in-law or their husband. But, I remember years ago, I had one of my mothers and she was finishing her rounds and becoming a pediatrician. And amazing, beautiful, wonderful birth and totally, everything that you could want it to be. She did the work, and then went to visit her in postpartum and said, I'm here for you, whatever you need. And if you get stressed over anything, just call me, I'll come back. Her husband calls me the next day and he says, she was freaking out giving the baby a bath. They were both crying. And I said, stop, call Jennifer. But when I went back to help them give the baby a bath, I didn't come in and give the baby a bath. I said, this is sacred. I'm just going to hold the space for you so that you can breathe and you can connect with your baby. Every step of the way, what do you think your child needs right now? What do you need? Is the room too cold? Do you, like just little bits of that. Where would you like to set it up? So it's very much that shifting that model of support and allowing them
how
to
we
lead.
give support.
Yeah.
So you gave that mother the greatest gift in the world, which is the confidence to be a mother. Had you come in and taken over and given that little adorable munchkin a bath, you would have enabled a panic mode. So you really empowered her with confidence. And I think that is how all healthcare providers, I think it's a paradigm that has to grow, and that something that we really have to work to change in the healthcare community in general, that we are not providing a service. We're not implementing something. We are helping people to become self-effective and independent and confident and self-empowered.
What was so important also was that for herself, not just as a mother, but as a pediatrician, to then step into that model of care herself. And that's where I'm so grateful for this opportunity, because we're mothers, but we're also women in the community. So this ripple effect of how we're showing up for our children and for the other women in our community is how we make those changes. And I'm excited to see another 5 years from now and another 10 years from now how much our community has grown from modeling this type of sisterhood, motherhood, friendship, womanhood coming together.
Yeah, we were saying before we started recording how we met 5 years ago, and within the last 5 years, there's been so much growth in women supporting each other, in women advocating for themselves, women seeking out a sense of community, and it's just beautiful. It's really beautiful to watch, and I know that it's only going to grow and grow. How do you deal with women? And I have women who come to me, and this is tough when women have gone through pregnancy and they have a birth plan and they've prepared and they've done the work and their birth does not go as they dreamed it would. How do you help those moms? Because it can be traumatic. And I do not use the word trauma lightly, but I have literally had moms come to me that have really done all the beautiful work, that have been prepared, and that dream of a certain birth. And then, either they needed a C-section or they needed another intervention, and they're literally shattered because they didn't have the experience that they dreamt of.
It's about embracing and recognizing. I feel like every child is born with karmic contracts, and sometimes it pushes us in very uncomfortable ways to seek out our growth. So I honor it in a way that, how can we now work backwards? Did you not have enough education? Did you not have enough support? Did you not seek out the right providers and birth team? What was it that you individually needed? I had one mother who, when we broke it down, what the most traumatic thing was, they denied her water. And her feeling that inner child within her was being denied a basic need. So it wasn't the details of anything but her emotional state. And in that emotional state, she then wound up, quote unquote, failing and having a C-section. But when we go back to what was the emotional container here, and what did you need, and recognizing that, is where we have the growth. So we don't want to come from victimhood. We want to really look at it and honor our individual needs. And I think the hardest question and answer is, what do I want? What do I need?
That is beautiful. There's a book called The Choice. It was written by a Holocaust survivor. I forgot her name, but she has a line in the book that I will never forget. She writes something like, you can't choose being a victim, but you can choose whether you want to live in victimhood. Mm-hmm. And I think that is so true. And the way that you help moms come to that is incredible. I recently had an amazing mom who also had a planned home birth. She did all the work at the last minute. They had to take her to the hospital, which thank God they did, because she really did need to go to the hospital. And she's pregnant again, and she came to see me, and we talked about her birth plan, and she said, I'm going to have a birth path. And what I've learned this time is that I need to be more flexible in my mindset as to what may happen. And as long as I have a healthy baby in the end, I will be okay. But it sort of took that first experience in order for her to grow and have that awareness and that acceptance for her to be comfortable with that.
The only thing, birth is inherently unpredictable.
Yes.
And so is life. So these are the skills that we're learning, and it's preparing us for motherhood. And I really trust that the divine knows what our soul needs and the experiences that we need for growth, and we can push against that growth and stay in resistance and victimhood and anger. And I really honor that space, that sometimes we're not ready to do it beforehand. But holding that space and having that path for them absolutely makes a difference.
I have a question just out of my own curiosity, and I really have been wanting to ask someone this. So recently I've seen these incredible videos that blows my mind of these moms giving birth in a tub, and they just look like they are in peace. They look like they have sort of gone to a place inside of them where it looks like they're not even feeling that physical pain. They're almost having this emotional emergence. And I guess my question is that something that you can actually prepare for, or does it take a certain personality type to be able to get to that place? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I knew you were going to say that. I got chills as you were about to say it.
I mean,
because
I watch
it's
these
such a
videos.
State of being.
Jen, I watch these videos. It's, I really don't like social media, and I don't go on social media a lot. But when I see a video like that, that is like the one thing that I will play over and over and over again. And more than anything else, I'm watching mom's face.
It's a transcendental moment, and it's knowing that this is possible for all of us. There's such a energetic force. So it's as everything. If we're meeting it with resistance, then we're not just allowing it to wash over us. So there's a moment where we can turn that pain into power, and it's very much just a mindset. No, we don't just walk into it. It absolutely is the mindset work and embracing what comes up for us. I always say the cervix is like a piñata. If you've got all kinds of trauma stuck in there and you've all kinds of wounds and you haven't dealt with all of that emotional, in that moment of birth, when that cervix starts to open, if it's 48 hours of opening and you're screaming and you're agonizing, I feel that pain. This is your massive therapy. And I also trust that this is going to be what's going to provoke a lot of healing afterwards, because you're meeting it in the face in that moment.
That's
so there's no timeline.
Yeah.
Sometimes we are led to do that work beforehand and do that emotional healing for whatever it is. So a lot of my program is addressing that little girl inside of you. What does she need? What is your relationship with your mother? How were you born? What are the energetics of it? And asking those really personal questions of what has been in your womb energetically, and how do we clear that from you so that you are just this clear vessel for light and love. And again, tying in, this is not just about you. When we start tapping into that maternal love and force, we're capable of anything.
Yes.
Like we've seen women lift cars for our children. So it's that same power when we tap in and we really integrate this child's soul and what is their experience, then we have more motivation to do that work for them.
Right. It's like our bodies can do the work. Our minds have to get on board in a certain way to make it happen the way that we want it to.
Absolutely. It's the mental mindset and the body follows.
And that's really hard. That's like work. We all can. I always say what you don't let come to the surface gets buried. Yes. Memories, trauma, experiences. So I love it that you're helping moms do that work before. In a perfect world, what would a mom's birth team look like from preconception to postpartum?
Oh, that's loaded because it's really individual. It's really about meeting them where they're at.
That's a good answer, by the way. People ask me questions all the time about therapy, and I'm like, it's individual. Yeah. Every single person looks different. So I think that's a great answer, actually.
But I do also have a program and a plan.
Right.
So it is a lot about doing the work, and if you need a therapist, get a therapist because your relationship matters. All of your relationships matter. So even guiding them through things like that and knowing what your coping skills are and your coping mechanisms, you might not know what they are, but let's figure out what works for you. Yeah. Do you like to journal? Do you like to meditate? Do you like to go for walks? Are your pets your therapy? It's about figuring that out. So there's still a program and also being a clear vessel.
Yes.
So detoxing in preconception and doing the right blood work and taking the right supplements, and not just you, but your partner, because it's a co-creation.
Yes.
And it's, so a lot of times I see families come to me and it's like the mother's the one who's pregnant and carrying the baby, and the husband's going to go out, and there's the divine feminine and there's the sacred masculine, and he's the provider and protector, and we get very disconnected. So how can we bring those two together to parent consciously, to hold, so he can hold that space as well for you? So right from the beginning, we're drawing them in and really understanding what their roles are. And then there's many portions where we're constantly checking in and what are your fears? And I really want to hear what your fears are. They can be completely irrational.
Yes.
And then sometimes it's just holding that space emotionally, or sometimes it's we have to do the work. It has to be evidence-based. Is this true for you? Or is it something that society planted in your head and it's not really rational? So we can demystify that for you. So there's a lot of steps throughout it. And again, I'm so grateful that we have 9 months to do that work.
It may everything I read and everything that I watch and everybody that I talk to always brings me back to, pelvic health, because I'm so passionate about it. And it really resonates with me because, we just developed this whole program, and everything that we do at Pelvic Core Rehab was born out of what what our clients are telling us they need, where we have 5 pillars of health. Detoxification, because you can't be healthy when you have inflammation. Nutrition, hormone balance, because we need hormone balance in order to function properly. Movement and mentorship, right?
Beautiful.
So we can't just have therapy. We can't just be pregnant and birthing. We need to look at the whole person and put it into one cohesive plan. One thing that reminds me of what you just said is, my favorite book, and I think I recommend this to every single client, is Wild Feminine by Tammy Kent. It is the most brilliant book, and for those of you who haven't read it, please do. She really helps moms to connect to every part of the pelvic floor and to the pelvic girdle and to every single pelvic organ. And there are so many moms that come to me and I will evaluate their pelvic floor and they're completely disconnected from, and that disconnection could look from them literally closing their eyes and dissociating to simply, me touching them and them having no idea where on their body I'm touching them. And I believe that in order for moms to have that birth experience that you're describing, they absolutely have to be physically, emotionally, and energetically connected to their pelvic floor.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And that's why I love, and I still teach prenatal yoga and mommy and me yoga, because we're going through these massive physical changes.
Yes.
So it's so overwhelming, and we need to be accountable to do the constant tapping in and checking in.
Yeah.
So it's not about just yoga, it's about the breath work. It's about engaging the pelvic floor,
Yes.
feeling those muscles and releasing them. I'll talk to my mothers about orgasms and how they feel different as your body is changing, and how is your uterus contracting. And they say to me all the time, like, I have no idea what it's going to feel like. Well, actually, you do. Let's tap into these changes that you're feeling every day. And if you can meditate on that and you can breathe into that space, it's less overwhelming. So there's definitely a model where women have gotten disconnected and overwhelmed by the changes in their body instead of embracing it.
Yes.
And it's like seeing that light, and that's really what's happening as your body's opening, and this light, it's really that tunnel of light where the baby soul is coming through and emerging out, and all of that emergence, it can be very, very overwhelming.
Yes. Yes, and I think that's why we need to start when moms are pregnant and be there for them for the 9 months. And, as you have said today, thank God there's 9 months, because there is work to do. We really believe that we should be seeing moms when they're pregnant so that they can stay connected to their abdominal wall, their pelvic floor, their breath. So I'm completely in agreement with all of that. When we were doing the prep for the podcast, I sent you a little document, and you brought up a point that really intrigued me, Jen. You brought up a point about how the birthing experience can be sexual. Mm-hmm. I want to hear about that, because I'm curious. I'm sure our listeners are curious. And I think maybe it's a new idea or concept that I would love to be exposed to, and I would love to tell our listeners about.
Well, there's the saying, how we get the baby in is how we get the baby out. And it's reminding families that this child was hopefully conceived intentionally and in love, and really embracing that emotion. And it's going back to, if all else we can just kind of take out of the picture, but we can just connect to the love that we have for this child. And there's so much fear and there's so much unknown, but the way that emotionally there's a connection, and it should be sacred, and it's two people coming together and your energies blending and honoring that created this child. But the physical stages as well, I think, are very telling. And I will have these conversations with my mothers, and it's interesting because the ones that are not, I say, if you're not comfortable to talk about this, it's like the joke, how are you going to give, if I ask you to poop in front of me, do you feel comfortable?
Right.
Right. And pooping is also, that's part of the release.
Yes.
And trusting somebody. So it's that same release, and it gets more and more and more intense. So if you've spoken to women that have trouble orgasming, it's this intensity and in this tensity. And are we turning this into pain instead of pleasure? And are we emotionally in trust? Is this the right partner? Is this the right person? Am I feeling safe? So all of those same questions. Is my provider someone I feel comfortable and safe with? Do I trust this person? Can I just surrender and allow it to just take over me? Because when we escalate and escalate and escalate, there's a ceiling on that. And then we go to an altered state and we pop through. So back to the women that are in these ecstatic, orgasmic births, what they're really doing is getting out of the way physically and just allowing these waves to come over us. And there's just nothing more parallel than an orgasm.
That is so profound. And again, it so brings me back to what I do in my practice, and women that, have pain with sex very often have overactive, not always, but overactive pelvic floors. They're holding on to tension. And for a while, your body can compensate and compensate and compensate. And then we run out of compensations, and there are physical, emotional, and mental manifestations to that. So that totally makes sense to me. And I absolutely love that. Thank you for that beautiful analogy, metaphor. It's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. I think also it's important to teach young women to be connected and about sacred sexuality.
Yes.
There's so much energetic distortions around sexuality in our culture, so much disconnection in our culture. So what I'm really wanting with this vision, like you said, bringing it back from the indigenous, is about the sacredness and the energetics about it. And just like we have to be responsible with choosing intentionally the right partner, you have choices. Choose intentionally who the right providers are for you, where the right space is for you.
We have to get rid of the noise. I feel like there's so much noise in the background in our lives of what we're supposed to do, what we're trained to do, what our friends are doing, and we lose our intuition. And I love what you're saying, because it really, what you're helping people do is go back to their intuition, go back to what they know is true, go back to their own knowing, because ultimately that's what's going to guide you.
The core of my program is safe. So where do you feel safe? And let's talk about that, and let's just really be honest. I've worked with women where one of the other girls in her social circle had a home birth, and she really, really did the work. But now I'm working with this friend who's now pregnant, and it's her turn. You're completely different.
Yes.
And your life experience have been completely different. So maybe just because you want that home birth and you want that experience, I'm going to be radically honest with you. And I'm going to say, you know what? What is true for you? And that's where we're empowered to be like, that's beautiful. I love what you did, but I'm not there yet.
Yes.
And the trauma comes from the emotional correlation. So whether we're being denied water or whether we're just struggling through it, I want to meet you where you're honestly at.
That's beautiful. And sometimes we need somebody else to ask us that question, which is why I love what you do. Because again, we get lost in our monkey mind. We get lost in that chatter. And then someone like you comes along and says, what makes you feel safe? What is it that you want? And then I bet you moms sit back and say, oh, let me think about that for a minute. Jen, I love you. I love you. I really so grateful that the doors open for us to develop a friendship and a collaboration. You're a rock star, my friend. In the truest sense of the word, you're a rock star. And I feel blessed to watch you continue to grow, because I cannot freaking wait to see what you are going to become, my friend. All I know is that I want to be along for the ride. That's all I know. Give us one pearl of wisdom for our listeners to take away.
Accept who you are, accept where you're at, embrace your growth, see your inner beauty.
Love it. Okay, 2 quick fun questions. When you think of your own mind, body, energy, what color do you see?
Right now, purple.
Okay, good. I very much use metaphors with color when I'm working with my clients. When you think of sensuality, what flavor ice cream do you see?
Chocolate.
Interesting. I see vanilla, because you could just add any other flavor to it and make that. Chocolate's very rich.
It's rich and decadent,
yes.
and it's just...
Love it. Love it. Jen, we're going to have to do a part 2 on this when you come back from Ecuador.
Oh, yes.
We're going to have to talk about that. Thank you so much for joining us, my friend. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of Your Pelvic Health Podcast, where we bring you the real lowdown on pelvic health matters. Don't forget to like, give us a 5-star review, follow so that we can give you the information that you want to hear. And remember, you need to be your own best advocate, and healing requires a whole body approach.
Amen.